My name is Nadine, and I am going to be teaching you bass clarinet lessons for the next couple weeks. I have been playing the regular B-flat clarinet for about 17 years. I just graduated from Westchester University, where I played a lot of bass clarinet in their large ensembles like band and orchestra, and I'm really excited to be working with you. First things first, if you haven't warmed up yet, go ahead and pause this video and play the C major scale that you worked on last week, or concert B flat major. Just take a minute and play it up and down a couple times to get used to playing for today. Okay, awesome. All right, so let's get started. Today I'm going to teach you about the chromatic scale, which looks a lot scarier than it is because there's so many notes in it, but it's really not that bad. Okay, so the chromatic scale is basically one octave, so C in our case, to the next C, but instead of just playing C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, you're going to play all of the little sharps and flats in between. So it's going to be a 12-note scale instead of an 8-note scale. So what the chromatic scale is going to sound like, first off, it's going to sound like this. So it's a lot of notes, but they're all really, really close to each other. So this is on one of your handouts that's attached to this video. The page is titled Chromatic Scales, and we're going to be looking at the first line today. Just for right now, we're just going to be looking at the top line of this page, but the lower part of that top line. So you're going to start on low C and go to middle C. You don't have to worry about high C yet today. That's if you want to get there, you can work on that on your own after this video is over. But for now, we're just going to be working on the lower octave because crossing the break on bass clarinet, if you're not used to it, can be pretty tricky. You're going to need a lot of air. So this scale is grouped in sets of 4, and you might notice that the first 12 notes, there are a lot of sharps, and the second 12 notes, there are a lot of flats. So that's because when you make a note sharp, you raise the note, and when you make a note flat, you're lowering the note. So basically, you raise the notes to get up to the top of the scale, and then you lower the notes again to go back to the bottom of the scale. So you're going to see sharps that you're not really used to seeing, like A sharp, and you're going to see flats that you might not be used to seeing, like G flat. So if you don't know the term enharmonic, all that means is one note that goes by 2 names. So G sharp and A flat are both this. They're both the same note. They sound exactly the same, but you might see both of them in the same scale or in the same piece, or in 2 different pieces, and you need to know what they're called. So this is a good way to get used to things like seeing A sharp and knowing that that means B flat, or seeing G flat and knowing that that means F sharp. So before we start playing this scale, I'm going to go over some of the alternate fingerings with you to make it way, way easier for you to play it. So when you get to D sharp, which is also the same as E flat, so the note 1 step higher than D, what you're going to do is, I'm sure what you're used to is using this lowest side key to play it, but instead of that, so you don't have to go like this, and try to get that to line up between D sharp and E natural, you're going to use this key right in here. I call it the fork key, but you might hear it called the sliver key, or in some cases even the banana key. But for us, we're going to call it a fork today. So you're going to play a D, and then you're going to press the fork key, and then you're just going to lift these 2 fingers up at the same time. It's much easier, it's cleaner, and it's going to sound together. So that just D, D sharp, and E. Just try that with me. So you can pause this video if that gave you some trouble, and you can just try it a couple times on your own to get the hang of it. The next one we're going to work on is F sharp on the way up. This one's a little weird because I don't know, you might have never done this before. So instead of going from F natural to F sharp and trying to coordinate your fingers to do that at the same time, which a lot of the times is going to sound like this, you don't want that little flub in there. So instead, what you're going to do is you're just going to play a regular old F, and you're going to press both of these bottom two side keys at the same time. So that's going to sound like this. So now we're going to go F natural to the F sharp with the two side keys, and then up to a G natural together. I'll count us off slowly. 1, 2, 3. So that's easier than trying to flip those two fingers back and forth. And if that gave you a little trouble, you can pause the video and try it a few times on your own, and then we'll continue. So now, you should know all of the notes in the chromatic scale, but I'm going to review them in a fingering chart. There's a fingering chart attached to this video for you to review if you need it. And the only other thing that can get really tricky is going from B flat up to B natural. It's something that clarinetists everywhere don't like doing, but we have to do it anyway. It's one of those things. So your B flat is going to be thumb, just the back thumb key and the A natural key. And then B natural, you're going to have to slide your finger off the A natural key to cover that hole. That's the most important part of getting from the low register, the shallow, to the mid register, the clarion. So you're going to have to cover that hole, or it's going to make a really, really gross squeak. It's happened to me a million times, and it's just not fun. So be really, really careful. That little tiny hole is the only thing you have to cover. It's the only hole you have to cover. Everything else, you're going to need to do like a really kind of fast motion. It might make a little noise. You can hear my keys kind of clicking. And you're going to really need to use a lot of air support to get up there. So make sure that you're breathing not from your shoulders. That's not going to give you some good air support. You're going to need to breathe from your diaphragm. So if you put a hand on your stomach, breathe out from your stomach and try to move your hand forward. And then once you can do that, try to pretend like your diaphragm is like a toothpaste tube and you're squeezing up from the bottom, not the middle. Because if you squeeze from the middle, then there's all that leftover toothpaste in the bottom. But if you squeeze from the bottom, you get that really like toothpaste will come out really, really fast and it'll go everywhere and it'll be horrible. But that's the kind of air that you want to use when you go up into the mid register of the bass clarinet. It can get really, really hard to do this well, so try it a few times. Just going from B natural to B flat, and really make sure you're taking a big old belly breath. If you take a chest breath before you even play, just notice yourself doing it, stop, and try again. And practice the breathing a little bit too before you start playing. It's gonna feel kind of weird at first if you're not used to it, to breathe from your diaphragm, but it's one of the most important things that we can do as wind musicians. So we're gonna go from B flat to B natural, and I'm gonna make sure to take a really, really good breath for you guys so you can see what it looks like. So just listen to me first, and then we can try it together. So that's a lot of air that I just used to get that to happen. And what you need to do, you see how my chin is not moving when I do that. You need to keep everything as steady and as solid as possible. You need a good, strong embouchure with tight muscles. These muscles need to be really tight. Like if you were to play, if you were to set your mouth to play, someone should not be able to squish your chin. You need to keep that as solid as possible, and it's a muscle that nobody else who isn't a wind musician has to worry about making this muscle exist, but we have to, and we have these like really strong chin muscles for it. So make sure you want to keep your chin really flat, so that nobody can squeeze your chin in, and that is going to keep your reed really steady. That's going to keep your air steady. You're not going to let anything happen underneath the mouthpiece. Nothing weird's going to go on with the reed. Keep it as steady as possible. Take a huge, huge breath. Keep your tongue really low, like you're saying the vowel O. So like the back of your mouth should be really, really open. And let's try it together. I'll count us off. 1, 2, 3. Good. So try that a few times on your own, especially if you squeaked, or if either of the notes squeaked. Try it a few times. This is probably the hardest interval to play on this instrument, or really on any clarinet for that matter, but the bass clarinet definitely makes it harder by requiring so much more air than we're used to. So, pause this video and try that a couple times if you need to. So we're gonna start playing the whole scale, but we're gonna start in the 4-note fragments that are kind of outlined by this sheet. So we are going to slur all the fragments, and then when we play the whole thing, we are going to tongue it. So what you need to do first, you're just going to play C, C sharp, D, and D sharp. Just those 4 notes pretty slowly. I'm going to count off and just play those 4 notes, and remember D sharp to play with this 4th key. When you hit the 4th key, hit it towards the back, not up here. Make sure your finger isn't flattening out. You're going to want to keep that curvature of your fingers where it should hit that key right there in the back. If you hit it all the way up here, I actually just did it, you're likely to whack this key by mistake and play a wrong note, and it'll sound really weird because that's not supposed to happen. It's gonna, if you whack that key up front and you hit the C, it's gonna sound like this, which is not what we want. So just the first 4 notes together, and then we're gonna add the second 4 and the third 4, and by the end of the session, we're gonna be able to play that whole scale, and it's gonna be really good. So, okay, I'm gonna count to 4, and we're gonna play the first 4 notes. So 1, 2, 3. Good job. So right now you can see my fingers, and you can see how slowly I'm moving and exactly where I'm hitting the keys, especially this sliver key, this 4th key. So make sure that you're really landing solid on every key before you move on to the next one. Play this as slowly as you need to make sure that you're doing it with good hand position, because it's so easy. If you're playing this fast, which you will need to eventually, if you're playing this fast and your fingers are flattening out, you're gonna make all sorts of weird little slips and mistakes, and it's just so much better to play with proper hand position, because the clarinet was built with the shape of the human hand in mind. So if your fingers aren't following that shape, you're gonna miss a couple keys along the way, or you're gonna hit them in the wrong spot, or you're gonna miss this little hole, and it's just gonna either squeak or honk or just make some kind of weird noise that the bass clarinets really seem to enjoy making. Let's move on to the second 4 notes. So you're gonna start on E natural, and you're gonna go E natural, F sharp with the 2 side keys, and then G. So I'll count us off. 1, 2, 3. Good job. And now we will do the third set of 4 notes, and we're gonna add the C at the top. So we're gonna do the last 5 notes. So G sharp, A sharp, B natural, and C natural. This is the hardest little fragment. 1, 2, 3. trouble, pause the video and just play through them a few times at whatever tempo you need to. Now we're going to put the whole ascending part of the scale together. So we're going to go from low C to middle C. So right now, we're going to play the whole ascending part of the scale, and we're going to tongue it. So it's going to sound like this. And you can take a breath wherever you need to. It's pretty slow and it requires a lot of air. So if you need to take a breath, I needed to take a breath, so it's okay. Don't worry about it. Wherever you can fit one in is a good place. Try to make it to the top if you can. We'll be playing it a little faster by the end, so it should be easier to make it to the top without breathing. I'm sure you all have more air than you think you do. So you don't need to breathe as often as you think you might need to breathe, especially if you're using that diaphragm like a toothpaste tube like we talked about. So now, together, we're going to play the whole ascending part of the scale from low C to middle C. We're going to play it together, slowly articulated, and I'll count us off. 1, 2, 3. So you can see me turning red. It does require a lot of air. Try to only take one breath on the way up if you can. Just make sure that all of your breaths, including the quick ones, are to refill your diaphragm and not moving your shoulders. So we're going to work on the descending part now. So this is the part with all the flats, like we talked about earlier. So you're going to start on high C, and this one's a little weird. This is a hard note to start on if you're not used to it. So then on the way down, the only other weird thing that you're going to have to do is when you're going from G natural to F sharp, you have to remember to use the side key. So write in whatever you need to write in to help you remember that. For me, I usually write the letter S for side and the number 2 for those 2 bottom ones. So I put an S2 over the G flats that I need to remember. Okay, I'm going to play this alternate fingering instead of the easier one. Because this feels easier until you have to switch to F natural. So make sure when you go down from G, don't touch this key. This key, just leave it alone until you're ready to play E natural. So that's the weird thing, to go from open G to thumb and the 2 side keys. So let's just try that just from G to F sharp, just a couple times back and forth before we do the whole descending scale. So just try it on your own. So it's a little weird and requires some coordination, so try that a couple times until you feel comfortable with it. And then really, really try to remember to do that on the way down. It's going to make your life a lot easier, I promise. So let's start with the top 4 notes going down from C, B, B flat, and A natural. We're going to play all those fragments slurred. So let's start from the high C and go down to the A natural. 1, 2, 3. If you can do that slurred, that interval between B natural and B flat, that's one of the hardest things to slur and slur smoothly. So if that's giving you trouble, you can tongue it for now, but know that it is a good thing to practice this whole thing slurred, because when you slur stuff, you find out where your fingers are too slow. Because when you slur them, you can hear every little millisecond in between the 2 notes. So you can hear if you're not lining up your 2 hands at the same time, and you can hear where you're maybe making little mistakes that if you're tonguing the whole thing, you might not even notice. So let's do the second fragment on the way down. So it's going to be A flat, G, G flat with the side keys, and F natural. 1, 2, 3. Good. All right, and let's do the last 5 notes from E natural, E flat with the fork, D natural, D flat, which is C sharp, and C natural. 1, 2, 3. Good. So we're ready to play the whole thing, the whole descending side of the scale, and we're going to articulate it this time. So you're going to go from middle C to low C, tongued, slowly with me. 1, 2, 3. Good job. So we're almost ready to play the whole thing. We just need to talk about articulations first. So this scale is, we're going to need to play it a little faster. I know it's a lot of fingers, but you're doing a great job. So we're going to try to push the tempo a little bit. The scale is put in groups of 4, so you can do it in groups of 4 16th notes or groups of 2 8th notes. But it is a really, really good way to start to get comfortable playing fast little things that might show up in your band music. The most common thing that's going to happen, especially on the bass clarinet, we're not going to play like the whole scale. Like you'll hear the flutes and the clarinets playing these really, really fast, like chromatic scales sometimes. Bass clarinet's not going to have too much of that, but what we will have is little fragments of it, like 3 or 4 notes in a row that are like those little chromatic fragments of a scale. So what this sheet does, which I love, is it gives you the same chromatic scale, but starting on every different note in the chromatic scale. So this is a really good thing to practice starting on like a low G. And the good thing about starting on other notes is that way, wherever it comes up in your music, you're prepared to handle it. So we're going to play the whole thing quickly, not super quickly, but faster. We're going to tongue on the way up and slur on the way down. So you get practice with those articulations, and then I'll give you different articulations to practice with at home. So I'm going to count off again, and we're going to play the whole thing, tongued on the way up, slurred on the way down. Okay. 1, 2, 3, 4. Good job. So if that was really, really tricky, you pause this video, put a metronome on, and do it at a slower tempo. The tempo that we just played was about quarter note equals 68. If you need to play it slower than that, by all means, feel free. Faster, absolutely. Set your metronome up higher and try it again if that was too easy for you. Another thing that you can do to make it harder, which we are going to practice in just a minute, we're going to move to starting on a G, so concert F, a low G, with all of your fingers. And this one, you're actually going to need yet another alternate fingering. So I'm going to try to pick it up so you can see. So for this one, when you go from B flat to B natural, instead of flipping your fingers back and forth, you're going to tap this other fourth key, which is a little smaller. Tap it in the back, not up here. Tap it in the back. It's going to be A sharp, B natural, and then you lift it up and play C. So G, G sharp, A sharp, B natural, C. So that's what that's going to look like. And we're going to go down to the G, the chromatic scale starting on G. and we're going to do the lower octave again, and we're going to do it with the articulation slur 2, tongue 2. I'm going to do it at kind of a slow tempo, so if this is too easy, you are welcome to switch it up and do it faster. Different articulation patterns. There are so many articulation patterns. So we're going to do slur 2, tongue 2 for going up and coming down. Starting on low G. And remember that alternate fingering for B natural with the 4th key. 1, 2, 3, 4. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do it just the ascending part, slur 2, tongue 2, for the G, the chromatic scale starting on G, or concert F. Okay, so now that we have done that, on your own, work on the rest of the chromatic scale starting on G. If it's too easy, start on whatever note you want and do whatever articulation pattern you want. Push these to faster tempos or slower tempos or whatever you want to do. Really make sure you're getting those alternate fingerings down, because those are going to be important even if you're not playing chromatic scales. They're going to come up in your band music more often than you think they are. So these exercises are really good to get used to those, to get used to using them and not really thinking twice about it. So to review our chromatic alternate fingerings, we have B flat to B natural with the fork. We have D natural to D sharp with the fork. And we have F natural to F sharp with the 2 side keys. Okay, so now you know how to play chromatic scale starting on really any note you want. You know all of the alternate fingerings that you're going to need. In the higher registers, when you get to high F and F sharp, it's the same fork as low B natural and B flat. And when you get to high A and B flat, it's the same fork fingering that you're going to use. You're not going to be using the side keys up high yet. But try this. If what we did today was really challenging, just keep working on the C chromatic scale and the G chromatic scale. Tongue on the way up, slurred on the way down, slurred on the way up, tongue on the way down, slur 2, tongue 2, tongue 2, slur 2, slur 3, tongue 1, whatever your heart desires to change it up a little bit. Please write in the alternate fingerings, because they're so easy to forget and they're so important. And make sure that you do this with a metronome, because it's really important that these things come out evenly, and that way you can challenge yourself to play them at faster tempos. Okay, you all did a really good job today. I will see you next week. Happy practicing.